Good evening, and welcome to our October 11th session of Bhagavad Gita, as it is. We're on chapter 13. Before we begin discussing the Gita, we'll chant our invocation mantras, offering respect to our teacher or teachers, those who are illuminating our path with the torchlight of knowledge. Om Jnana Timirandasya Vinanjana Salakaya Chakshuro Miritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Sapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadontikam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Chimate Bhakti Vedanta Saniti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vastyatadisho Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chanting is so nice, you want to end it.
Скажи мне, что ты будешь делать? Сейчас я уйду, быстро приеду. Что ты будешь делать?
Хорошо.
Хорошо. Угу. Хорошо. Три, сколько страниц? Сколько страниц ты будешь делать? Угу. All homework for robotics. Ты никогда не делал robotics homework? Никогда?
No. I did sometimes.
Почему ты не sometimes, не всегда? У тебя есть цель.
Okay. Had a little Russian discussion going on there. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly discussion class on the Bhagavad Gita. We are blissfully going through the Bhagavad Gita verse by verse, and I'll make a little comment and at the end ask for questions. So if you have any questions, please jot them down and we'll discuss at the end of the class. So this chapter, we discussed the 12th chapter, the first 6 by many acharyas, recognize the first 6 of Krishna introducing and discussing karma yoga, how we can act in such a way that will help us to become purified and to make advancement in our spiritual path. So karma yoga is the first 6 chapters, 1 through 6. And then the second 6 chapters, 7 through 12, is actually the Bhakti Yoga section, kind of the heart of the Gita. Because from the perspective of the Gita, both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, which are the last 6 chapters that we're getting into now, 13 through 18, both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are leading us to Bhakti Yoga. And there's indication of that in the end of the 6th chapter, where Krishna answers Arjuna's question, what yoga system is considered the highest yoga system, or the yoga system where the most amount of understanding realization comes. And Krishna definitely says very clearly, yoginam api sarvisham nadgate nantaratmana. And of all the yoga systems, that the yoga of getting close, intimate with Krishna, worshiping Krishna, glorifying Krishna, that is the topmost of yoga systems. So we'll discuss a little bit about yoga and their function a little bit more. But let's begin. Chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Put my phone on mute. Okay, this Prabhupada has both of these, text 1 and 2 together, so I'll read 1 and 2. Arjuna said, "Oh, my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, material nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field." So the 4 things which are first discussed, how the living entities in the course of time in the 13th chapter, Krishna will be exchanging questions and answers with Arjuna. And 4 basic topics are how living entities come in contact with material nature. In other words, if there is a separateness between body and consciousness which motivates the body, how does that consciousness come in contact with material nature? It's one of the things that's discussed. Number 2 is how can one get liberated from being bound up in material nature? Third point is how one is delivered through yoga. Because one of the many things that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita is yoga and how yoga delivers us from the shackles of material engagement. So that is also discussed here in the 13th chapter. And fourth, the relationship between material body and soul, the relationship between the ultimate, the supreme, and the relationship between, so you have body and soul, relationship between supreme and soul, and the relationship between supreme and material nature, the supreme soul, the super soul, and material nature. What are the interactions between these various components of existence that is uncovered in the Bhagavad Gita and clearly elaborated upon throughout the whole Bhagavad Gita? So 6 topics that Arjuna is talking about that he wants to know. He wants to know about material nature. In Sanskrit, it's called Prakriti. He wants to know about Purusha. And one definition that's given of Purusha is the enjoyer, but we can understand the difference between material energy, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego, and the life force which motivates those elements. That's discussed in the 7th chapter. And herein, Arjuna is asking for a further elaboration of what is Prakriti, the material energy, and what is Purusha, that which motivates the material energy individually and universally. So what I mean by that is individually is the body. The composite of material elements is contained within this body, the body that we have. What motivates this body? When we have the time of conception, sperm meeting ovum. Ovum is nothing more than a cluster of cells. Sperm is an activated force. When there is a collision course between the ovum and the sperm, we see that once the sperm penetrates the protein covering and enters into that cluster of cells, a miracle happens. What is that miracle? That cluster of cells begins to form or take form into a body. And very, very quickly, we see how that cluster of cells, in a matter of weeks, a few months, that cluster of cells is embryo. It becomes form, or the seed of form, and then develops into a full-fledged child. So that is a way to understand the interaction between Prakriti, material energy, and Purusha, the life force. Now, when we'll discuss a little bit later in the 13th chapter, Arjuna asks what's Brahman, the discussion about Brahman. And the wonderful thing about Brahman is the life force, the energy which produces consciousness, which is conscious, as opposed to the material energy, which is not conscious. But how Krishna further elaborates, he talks about Brahman as being the soul. So the soul is Brahman also. So this understanding of Brahman twofold, being the energetic force or the principle, and also being the innumerable living entities. It's described that there are innumerable living entities, and each one of those living entities, the soul, is full of light. It is a light force. And there are literally, as I said, innumerable or infinite amount of souls in existence. And this also is considered the nature of Brahman. Now, you have 2 schools of thought within Vedanta, you have Advaita Vedanta, and then you have the Vaishnava approach, Vishishta Advaita, and the Achinta Veda, Veda Tattva of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But what is really wonderful about that is it gives us an understanding that Brahman has an energetic force, which is basically the way the Advaitins see it. They don't see it as individuality, but only as oneness. And that is the totality or the sum of all existence, as opposed to the way the Vaishnavas see it as totally individual, and it is not the sum of all existence, that there is form, there is incarnations or avatars, there's like innumerable forms and planets, lokas, that exist eternally and that the living entity aspires for. So that's what bhakti is all about. Bhakti is all about aspiring for that eternal freedom in one's spiritual form, in eternal association, in a loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. That is Bhakti's main thrust, whereas the Advaitin philosophers, headed by Shankaracharya, they see form as part of the illusion, and the whole goal of mukti, or liberation, is to become free from that illusion. And when you're free from that illusion, you merge into the principle of the oneness of this energy, this life force conscious energy. A very brief discussion about a very lengthy and complex topic, but I just thought I would mention that for you so that you could understand that. So Arjuna brings up Prakriti and Purusha. You also get that in the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali talks about Prakriti and Purusha duality, that there's a distinction between Prakriti, material nature, and the living entity. Arjuna asks about that. He asks about 6 things. Prakriti Purusha, the field of activities, which basically is the body. That's the 3rd. 4th is the knower of the field of activities. Chaitra is the field of activities. Chaitragya means the knower of the fields. So for our understanding, the field of activities means the individual body. The knower of the field of activities means the soul, the individual soul that's in each individual body. And that soul is the knower of his field of activities. So that's what Arjuna is asking about, a little clarification on that, just to make it very, very clear. And then knowledge. So knowledge from this perspective means understanding the distinction between Prakriti and Purusha, or understanding the distinction between matter and spirit. If we don't have that preliminary knowledge, then yoga, you really can't enter deeply into yoga, because yoga, from all different angles or perspectives, yoga is basically to give us the understanding of the distinction between matter and spirit. So knowledge, Arjuna is asking to further elaborate on knowledge between Prakriti and Purusha, the body and the soul. And besides the existence of the body and the soul, we have the existence of super soul within each body. So we are a walking vessel, one, that contains 2 entities within the heart. The individual entity known as Jiva, and divinity, super soul, present separately, distinctly from the jiva, but situated right next to the jiva. And the function of the supersoul is basically it's to create a reciprocation. In the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about it a little bit. He says, Sarvasya chaham ridi sanivishto matak smritir jnanam aponam cha. So the presence of the supersoul provides smritir jnanam aponam. So remembrance, knowledge, or forgetfulness, depending on this. So what I mean by reciprocation, what is the living entity desiring? If the living entity is desiring to forget the eternal relationship and servitude towards the Supreme, then that's also granted through the presence of Prakriti, or through the influence of Prakriti. Influence has the ability to cause, when the soul comes in contact with it, to forget. It has the influential power to cause the soul to forget its real nature. And that's what causes us to think that we're the body and nothing else. And the deeper one falls into illusion, the more one erroneously invests in the body. And I love this analogy. I use it often. You've all probably heard it a couple of times, but it's like being advised to invest in a company that's going to go bankrupt. So illusion causes us to develop the mindset where we're investing our energy into the body, which is going to go bankrupt. And we can see that illusion is so deep and so strong. I remember I was a director of a assisted living facility in South Philly some years ago. And so, of course, at that time I was deeply immersed in bhakti, and I had been studying. That was like in the late 90s. So I had been still involved in bhakti since early 70s. So I had this perspective of life and, the various stages of life and old age, etc. And I got to see firsthand that if you invest solely and wholly in your body and your mind, then what the result of that investment is, and it's bankruptcy. Because even if a person lives, to a ripe old age of 80s, late 80s or 90s, or even 100 years old, there's very little enjoyment that can be received from your investment. It's like you have this big investment, a large sum of money, and you're not getting any interest back on it, and you're not able to withdraw it. So the body at that point, because the eyesight goes weak, the hearing goes weak, the muscles lose its strength, the joints get calcified, so many things like that occur. So that is why those that are particularly thoughtful try to understand if there's more to life, if there is a purpose beyond that, beyond the investment of energy in the cultivation of the body and enjoying that body and its senses and the interaction of the senses with the external sense objects. One who is thoughtful, and practically every generation, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the ancient Egyptians, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, all the great cultures of the world have their understanding of or perspective of life and how we're to live it and what is the afterlife. It's not by chance that this is there. It's because it is our nature to know purpose of life. And when we, like I say, when we squander the energy, then we're left with a bankrupt situation at the end. And if we wait till the end, it's harder because we've already cultivated for years and years an habitual mindset. We've cultivated a narrative that's going on in our head. And that narrative becomes so deep and so embedded, it's really hard to change it. That's why it's recommended in the great sacred text of the Vedas, now is the time. So whatever age group you're in, it doesn't matter. Now is the time. We have the good fortune to be sitting here. Why are you spending your time listening to Bhagavad Gita? Obviously, all of you have thought about and are thinking about the purpose of your life. What is my purpose? The 4 pillars of success in life, even from a psychological perspective, is social interaction, purposeful life, the narrative that you cultivate, and an interest in transcendence. This has been the conclusion of some psychological research. Social interaction, and that's been throughout many, many different psychological studies. It's not just money or fame, adoration, and distinction, but a meaningful purpose. What am I here for? Why am I put on this planet? Am I just a blip on the eternal radar screen that comes and goes and that's it, ceases to exist? Just think about it for a moment. Non-existence. Try to meditate on that concept that you will not exist. Nothing. It'll just disappear. Most of us can't even grasp that because the very fiber, according to Bhagavad Gita, the very fiber of our existence, of who we are, is existence. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Eternity, eternal existence. Knowledge, cognizance, understanding that there is a greater purpose, a greater dimension to why we're here. And bliss, happiness, an unending happiness. So this is part of our very nature of our existence. So that's why it's very difficult to us to comprehend that we will not exist any longer. Poof, we're gone. Poof, we're here. Poof, we're gone. Nobody wants that, and no one can even fathom that. It's because, like I said, the very fiber, the core of our existence is exactly that. Consciousness. The consciousness is not shut off like you turn out a light. Consciousness is steady. That's why Krishna says in the 2nd chapter of the Gita, when he's first giving Arjuna instructions, Dehinosmin yata dehe kamaram jovanam jara ta dehantara praptir yeras tatra namuyat. That as the body goes through its various changes, like birth, babyhood, youth, adolescence, middle age, old age. The soul similarly goes through a change at the time of death. That's the conclusion that Krishna gives, in terms of him hinting at us as what is our true nature. So these things are going to be thoroughly discussed. Text 3. O scion of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So when Krishna is saying knower of the field, the soul, and Chaitra, the field, the material body, and Chaitragya, the knower of the field, now Krishna is putting a little addendum in here. He's saying, but I am also there, and I'm the knower of all fields. When you catalog all the distinctions that Krishna makes between what is God and what is the living entity, you can put that into your list. You go to the 4th chapter and Krishna gives a list of criteria. You go to the 7th chapter, you go to the 11th chapter of Gita. So 4, 7, 11, go to the 2nd chapter of the Gita. You can put a list, you can make up a list of what is the distinction between God and the living entity. Because sometimes people say, I am God. But then Krishna doesn't let you get away that easy just by making a statement. There's a criteria. And do you meet that criteria? If you claim to be God, do you meet that criteria? And if you don't, then you're not God, you're exposed. So you can put that point right there, that you, Arjuna, are the knower of your field. You're the soul within that body. The body is the field of activities. The soul is the Chaitragya, the knower of the field of that activities. And within the same body is Super Soul, Paramatma, who is the knower of all fields of activities simultaneously. So put that into your list. And Krishna very humbly says, that is my opinion. So text 4. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are. So Krishna raises 5 points in this particular verse. First, he says how the body is constituted. And put in your notes, that'll be explained in verse 6 and 7. Number 2, what changes the body undergoes? What are the changes that the body undergoes? And that's explained in this chapter in text 7 and 20. Number 3, third point that Krishna raises is how, when, and where the body is produced. And Krishna will explain that in text 6, 21, 22, and 30. Fourth point that Krishna raises is the identity of the knower of the field of activities. And that's explained in 14 through 18 and text 23. And the fifth point that Krishna raises is the influence of the knower. And that's explained in texts 14 through 18. So the 5 points again, how the body is constituted. 1, 2, what changes the body undergoes. 2, 3, how, when, and where the body is produced. 4, the identity of the knower of the field of activities. And 5, the influence of the knower. So these are 5 points that Krishna raises, and he addresses the remaining topics throughout. So text 5, that knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. So Vedanta Sutras, summary of Vedanta, and there it's quite complex, but there you get indications of distinction between the knower of the field and the field of activities, or the soul and the body. This is the kind of knowledge that gives us the strength, the determination, the clarity of perspective to begin to cultivate the mindset that connects the dots of the purpose of our existence. What is the purpose of our life? That's why knowledge really helps in terms of being able to practice bhakti. That's why Krishna has these 2 limbs, knowledge in the latter portion of the Gita and proper activities in relationship to the Supreme in the front part of the Gita. It's sandwiched like an Oreo cookie. You've got the cream in the middle. 7 through 12, when Krishna talks about bhakti and what comes as a result of practicing bhakti. So text 6. Just wanted to tell a little story. I was talking, I forgot to mention this earlier when I was talking to you about the investment in a bankrupt situation. I heard this wonderful story about the pheasant and the bull. The pheasant and the bull were out in the field underneath a big tree. And the pheasant was complaining to the bull, I'm getting old. I can barely flap up to the lower branch of this tree. So the bull says to the pheasant, oh, I've got a solution for that. And the pheasant says, you do? He says, yeah. And the pheasant says, what is it? And the bull says, you take a little portion of my dung and you eat it. And you do that regularly. And very quickly, you'll experience great strength. So the pheasant looks at the bull like, you're kidding, right? And the bull goes, no, just try that and I guarantee you. So the pheasant, we can see a lot of parallels in our society, people who are, trying all things. I mean, it's a big subject now, how to defeat old age. People are spending lots and lots of money to try to defeat old age. So it is a topic, it is a concern. So the pheasant, and people do a lot of very foolish things, in an effort to try to conquer old age. So the pheasant says, why not? So the pheasant starts every day taking a portion of the bull dung and eating it. And lo and behold, in a week's time, the pheasant's feeling very strong. He's feeling much stronger. He said, this is actually working. And the bull encouraged him, yeah, keep doing it. Don't worry. You'll see. So the pheasant does it. 2 weeks pass. The pheasant feels like, wow, I really feel like my young self again. And he's able to fly up very easily to the first limb. Very easily. Before he was having trouble. So another 2 weeks go by and the pheasant says, I can fly like, I'm a young chick. And he flies all the way up, and he also puts on some weight. He flies all the way up to the top branch. And there he is, with his newfound energy, proud as a peacock on the upper branch. But lo and behold, he does not know that right across the field is the farmer. And the farmer is sitting on his porch. And before, he really, from the angle of vision of his porch, he really couldn't see the pheasant because the pheasant was on the ground where they normally nest and hatch their eggs and all that. But now he sees this big fat pheasant at the top of the tree, and he goes and grabs his shotgun, and he gets close up to he shoots the pheasant out of the tree. So the moral of the story is obvious. We invest, like a lot of people, I see a lot of people invest a lot of time. I have a cousin, and he's 2 years younger than me, and he's gone to the gym 3 times a week for like 40 years, like never missing. Even if he's sick, he goes to the gym, which is nice. I mean, it's nice to keep your vessel in good shape, but there's a purpose, like yoga. I remember once Srila Prabhupada commented on yoga. It's the best form of exercise that exists, and if you do it, you'll be in good physical condition. But is that the purpose of human life? Because now, your good physical condition will only last so long. And not even the duration of your life. As I said before, many people, their joints, their knees, their back, their neck, their eyesight, their hearing, their taste, their smell, so many things. So investing like that, even if you do put yourself into good shape, you have a big target on your chest. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Time I am, destroyer of all worlds." So what has to happen is side by side. Responsible person will ride 2 tracks. The track of your duty, dharma, and part of your duty is to maintain good health, good nutrition. But simultaneously, when you have the good health and your mind is keen, is to understand the purpose of life, the nature of our existence. So this is the important aspect of our life. And once we do that, we feel like we're thriving. When Aristotle was discussing, about purpose of life and all that, he said, there's 3 ways you enjoy. You enjoy senses. You enjoy leading a good life, a moral life. And there's enjoyment that comes through entering into transcendence. The first 2 are temporary. The last one is eternal. So Aristotle says, by doing this in parallel, in tandem, one thrives. So we don't just want to live. We want to thrive, and we can thrive at any age if we are balanced in our approach to life. And when the imbalance is there, then what happens is imbalance. Then sometimes we renounce or reject things that can uplift us, help us. And when we focus in only on gratification and ignore the element of detachment that is required in order to progress spiritually, then also that imbalance is there, and we won't thrive. we don't thrive. And no matter how hard you try, we won't thrive. So the idea is to thrive as much as you possibly can by leading the balanced life as recommended in the various sacred texts like Gita. Even Krishna says in the 6th chapter, yogi who eats too much or eats too little, so over gratification on one hand or false renunciation on the other hand, eats too much, eats too little, sleeps too much, sleeps too little, too much recreation, not enough recreation, that one cannot be a yogi in such a state of mind. And even the Buddha himself, he was a prince, wealthy family, royalty. So he had everything. And then when he witnessed old age and disease, because his father tried desperately to hide that fact from him, but when he finally had the opportunity to witness old age and disease, he was mortified. And he saw people suffering as a result of old age, disease, and ultimately death. So he wanted to, in his meditation, to understand how to transcend that suffering condition. So when he went off into the forest, when he renounced, he became a severe tapasvi, an ascetic, and practiced so much austerities, not shaving, not cutting the hair, sitting in meditation for hours, eating just little bits, etc., etc. So much austerity. And he was sitting by the bank of the Ganges River in meditation, and in the distance, floating by in a boat, was a music teacher. And the music teacher was saying to the student within earshot of the Buddha, he was tuning the stringed instrument, and he was saying, if the string is too tight, it will break. If the string is too loose, it will not play. So we see here, just with this simple stringed instrument, ektar, that's tuned to E. Now, if I was to lower that tuning, loosen the string, you don't get anything there. And if I was to take it all the way back up, beyond, and if I was to keep on going, which I won't, because I'd break the string. So when the Buddha heard that, he realized that's life. That life cannot be too severe, because if it's too severe, you can break. And life should not be devoid of detachment, because in a life of total gratification, then one will be influenced, covered, and not understand the purpose of life and not experience the true nature of our being, Satchit Ananda. And further beyond that, understanding that nature is pure love of God. We won't have that ability to do that. So this is an important concept. And everyone, that's where Ayurveda comes in. Having the association of my wife, who is an Ayurvedic doctor, you really begin to understand more with clarity, balance, and how each individual has their balance and has to find their balance in consultation with someone who knows how to help you find your balance. What to eat, how to eat, when to eat, etc. And these adjustments, life adjustments, helps us to get into balance, and that is a proper environment for the practice of yoga. So there's a lot of nuances when someone says they're practicing yoga, but there's a lot of nuances in terms of how to live your lifestyle in a way that will be beneficial, will help you in practicing your yogic path. Okay. Text 6 and 7. The 5 great elements. Who knows what the 5 great elements are? Who can tell me? Okay, Eleanor?
Fire, water, ether, that's it.
Okay, earth, fire, air, ether, and earth,
Water.
earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Those are the 5 great elements. Okay? False ego, ahankara, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions. All these are considered, in summary, to be the field of activities and its interactions. So this text 6 is listing the 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then the subtle elements, as Krishna mentioned them: mind, intelligence, false ego. That's contained in, according to Patanjali, in the chitta. The unmanifest, that's the elements that are unmanifest. The senses, the mind, and the 5 sense objects. So each sense, what does our eyes see, our tongue taste, our nose smells, our ears hear, our skin touches. So these are that which is there. So Krishna mentions all of these, and he says, in summary, these are the field of of activities and its interactions. Okay, this next one, and I think we'll end with this. This is 8 through 12, and this is a mouthful. This is really giving us items of knowledge, text 8 through 12. Humility. Notice what is mentioned first by Krishna. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. Now, I want to just stop here because this is oftentimes very misunderstood. It's not that you don't fulfill your obligation to children, wife, home, and what comes along with it. Because sometimes people falsely renounce their duty or their responsibility to home, family, wife, children, etc. That's not what Krishna is talking about here. It means that if you get absorbed in that and that only, that is your sole and whole function or purpose of existence. It's noble to be a good family person, but also, the Purusharthas, artha, economic development, kama, sense gratification, dharma, responsibilities, they all lead up to moksha. So it's not wrong for economic development. It's not wrong to have some gratification of senses. And it's not wrong to follow your dharma, but not at the expense of moksha, not to ignore that there should be a path that you are following. So while you are doing your duty and you are experiencing economic development, especially when you're a family person and gratification of the senses, there's also dharma, duty, responsibility, but it all should point or should all be in service to cultivation of moksha or liberation or freedom from the shackles of the body mindset. That is, those three things are in service to moksha, not at the expense of moksha. So that's what, when Krishna lists the item of knowledge, this is what he's saying when he mentions that freedom from entanglement. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. One of the definitions that Krishna gives of yoga is samatvam. And samatvam is this even-mindedness. That is what yoga practice is cultivating, that even-mindedness, that we don't get too elated with pleasure, we don't get too depressed when there's unpleasant things occurring in our life. So this constant, this stability, this steadiness, this even-mindedness, this is the item of knowledge when one cultivates yoga properly. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. So this is where the bhakti comes in. Bhakti is described as constant, unalloyed. Unalloyed, if you're not familiar with that word, it means pure. When you have alloys in it, you are taking one substance, like you take gold. You have pure gold, and then when you add alloys to gold, then you reduce the quality of gold or the amount of gold. So for instance, 24 karat gold, 22 karat gold, 18 karat gold. Why is it going down? There's the presence of more alloy in there. So when the word, and you'll hear it often, especially in Srila Prabhupada's translations, you'll hear this word unalloyed, and it means pure, without any tinge of anything else. Specifically, karma and jnana. That's specifically what's being referred to in pure devotion. It means the influence of the alloy of karma, doing things, activities for results, and that you can enjoy, and jnana, just having a focus on becoming wise rather than the purpose of the wisdom. So aspiring to live in a solitary place. Does it mean that we all go off to the Himalayas? No, it means that you have in your home, there should be a place within your home and within the time of day that you have where you can be solitary. There can be that solitary moments in your life. We all need that to decompress. It really helps us in our decompression, from what we do in the course of the day. Many of you are working, probably working very hard, and you need that decompression chamber, and this moments by yourself, very important. So you can go to a solitary place, like when I chant, my wife and I chant japa, we like to go to the beach, especially early in the morning. Why? Because it's relatively a solitary place that's filled with sattvic energy and prana. Prana means the life force that comes from nature. So the combination of prana, that life energy that keeps the mind alert, and the sattvic nature, the sound of the waves breaking, the breeze blowing, the sun shining, etc. So this is a good moment to be. And we go in our different. My wife goes for her 10-mile walk, and I stay put, and we both do our japa. So this is important. Detachment from the general mass of people. That means, again, that we have our moments where we can be, in our own space, free from the general mass of people, and influenced by the general mass of people, meaning that I'm doing things and because I don't want to be seen in this way or that way. So being influenced by the general mass of people also. Accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So Krishna gives us that nice list of items that he considers to be knowledge. So I'm going to stop here, and it's 8:03. Sorry, we're on for a little bit longer. That's a very important verse. If you have the time, please read the 8 through 12 again and meditate on that and see, how you are already incorporating that in your life, or what items of knowledge you need to incorporate in your life in order to be in complete knowledge. So if we have any questions, please do not hesitate.
That
Yes, Eleanor.
in Spanish, do you?
Say that again.
Do you remember that I'm reading in Spanish while you read in English?
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So I have a question. I have this question. In 6-7, did you say aggregate?
6, 7?
Yeah.
What's the Spanish word?
Affliction.
Affliction. The 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate.
No,
Yes.
sorry, not affliction. Like grouping it.
Yeah, well, that's what aggregate means. When you speak of the aggregate, it means the combination.
And why he would say that?
Well,
Because
let's get the definition up here, and see what we can figure out here. Aggregate. I really like.
Understood that either one of these things all together, or 3 of them, or 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In the dictionary, aggregate is clustered in a dense mass formed from several. Oh, this is not applicable. This is a biological.
Yeah.
So as an adjective, it means a dense mass. As a verb, it means to collect or gather into a mass or a whole, or to amount to a whole sum or total. And as a noun, a mass or body of units or parts somewhat loosely associated with one another. The whole sum or amount. So that's what Krishna means here, the aggregate, the whole sum.
So would you say a building block?
Say that again?
Building block.
Upending block?
Building, a building
Oh,
block.
building block, yeah. Yeah, that would be a good way to see
I
it.
took that from Nyaya.
Yes.
So what was it doing here? It was my question.
All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. So what is the purpose of that? All of these things combined, the aggregate, comprises the field of activities and its interactions. All of these things combinedly. That's what I'm getting from it. I'm reading here to see if there's a further explanation of it. Okay, let me read this here. Here, Krishna gives a more detailed explanation of the field of activities. Text 6 lists the 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifest, the senses, the mind, and the 5 sense objects, the 24 material elements. So maybe that's what he means by aggregates, the 24 material elements, because here it's not mentioned there. But in the purport, it's saying the 24 material elements describes 7 qualities of the mind derived from the interaction of the 24 elements. These qualities are also within the realm of the living entity's field of activities. So I think it's mentioned in Sankhya Yoga, and here there's the 25, which includes the living entity. I think that's the reference to the aggregate.
Okay, thank you.
Irina, do you have a question?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare
I have a
Krishna.
question about how Bhagavad Gita explained difference between revenge and protection. Protection of your homeland, your family, your kids,
Yeah.
about violence.
Yeah, well, the Bhagavad Gita certainly begins on a battlefield, and the whole quandary that Arjuna is in is, I have to fight and kill all these people who are my relatives and my friends and teachers, etc. So there's his dharma was the dharma of a Kshatriya. We all have, according to who we are, Brahmin, Vaishya, Sudra.
They say we Shudras. We all
Huh?
Shudras.
Yeah.
They say in Kali Yuga we all Shudras.
Yeah, all right. Kalao Sudra Sambhavaha. That is our dharma. We all can't figure it out. But so that's a great question. I think the difference between revenge seems to come from a place of confusion. You know, when something happens to you and you want to have vengeance, you want to wreak some vengeance on the person who has done something to you or to your family. Whereas protection means, you know, you have the right to protect your home and your family. So that's more of a, when it's coming at you, you have the right to protect. Revenge means when you now go out and seek to inflict violence on others for a reason, even if the reason seems to be warranted or justified. So one is going out, the other one is staying within, within your realm, so to speak, and protecting those. Because even according to Bhagavad Gita, there's 5 elements of society that need to be protected. Let's see if I can remember them.
Cow, women, kids.
Exactly.
Brahman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cow, women, Brahmins,
kids,
children,
and old people.
and the elderly. So those 5 elements of society need to be protected, which is a great part.
Even with the guns and bombing, even with the
guns and
weapons.
bombing, you mean weapons?
Yeah, weapons.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they're attacking you, they're coming to you, then you have to defend yourself in a particular way that you are capable of defending yourself. That is allowed. There's 6 types of aggressors that you can fight against. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. It's one who burns your home down, one who kidnaps,
occupies others' land.
Go ahead, Shaktiman, do you know all 6 right offhand?
No, all 6, but I can remember one more, like occupying others' land.
Occupying another's land, kidnapping your family member, burning, trying to inflict harm on you. There's it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita in a purport. Prabhupada lists the 6 types of aggressors. I probably have it in my notes somewhere, and I could send it to you if you like. But even a sadhu, from a sadhu perspective, those life forms that will attack you without motivation can be killed, like a poisonous snake, for instance.
Mosquitoes.
Exactly. Mosquitoes, poisonous snakes, anything that without provocation will attack you, you can defend yourself. So even on the basic natural level, that's there. I remember once where my home was occupied by a copperhead, which is poisonous, and I had to kill it because, it could have harmed me or my family. So, not even to wait for provocation. It says that a sage will not lament over the killing of a. Okay, here's a list. That was Shaktiman here. They are a poison giver, one who sets fire to the house, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupy another's. What is that? I only got 5 there, Shaktiman.
Land.
Yeah, another's land, and one who kidnaps a wife.
One who occupies another's what, and one who kidnaps what?
Another's land.
Another's
and one
land.
who kidnaps a wife.
And one who kidnaps wife. Those are the 6 types of aggressors, and they can be punished.
They don't mention kids, just wife.
I think
I think
the Kauravas did everything.
Yeah, I think the whole family unit.
I think the Kauravas did everything from all the 6.
Yeah.
They gave poison to Bhishma. They built a wax house.
Yep, that's right. Duryodhana does all these things. That's why. So now you know why the Arjuna fought, because Duryodhana, he fulfilled all 6 of the aggressions there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions. Greatly appreciate it. Does anyone have anything else to say? It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. It could be a comment, an observation, or clarification. No? Well, thank you very much, all of you, for your attendance. Greatly appreciate it to have your association. Kind of jump starts the week, doesn't it? In the midweek, we get to meditate deeply on Gita and have each other's association. So thank you all so much. Tomorrow I'm off to North Carolina to see the leaves change. We've lived in Puerto Rico 4.5 years and now in Florida, so we haven't seen that in quite a long time. So we're going up there. There's a friend of ours that owns a 350-acre farm right in the North Carolina-Georgia border, so in the mountains. So we're going up there for a couple of days. So wish me well, and I'll see you all next week on Wednesday. In the meantime, you all have a happy, healthy, and holy week. Till that
Thank you so
time.
much for the have a safe trip. You all.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.